Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Premier League check-in podcast with me, Benjamin Bloom, and the great Matt SB. I mean, there's good news and bad news, Matt. I mean, one of the teams on 0 wins has got a win. But if you're an Ipswich fan like I am, it wasn't a great weekend. Welcome, fella.
Yes, thank you for having me. Looking forward to talking some more Premier League football again. It's interesting down at the bottom. The narrative changes very quickly each week with each result, doesn't it? So, we'll get into that today.
Not for the better sometimes either, Matt, but we'll get into that. Get your views in this round in the Premier League. It was Palace 0, Liverpool 1 in the early. Arsenal 3, Saints 1. Saints did lead in that game, Matt. Brentford 5, Wolves 3. Goals. Leicester 1, Bournemouth 0. Take a bow. Leicester, they are off the 0-win train. It's not a train, is it? Stuck in the station, pretty much, if you're on 0 wins. Man City 3, Fulham 2. West Ham 4, Ipswich 1. Gnarly. Everton 0, Newcastle 0. Villa 0, Man United 0. Sounds like some of the players need the international break already, Matt, doesn't it? Chelsea 1, Forest 1. Fair play, Forest, who have now, won at Anfield and drawn at Stamford Bridge. You'd love to see that if you're a Nottingham Forest fan. And big comeback in the hyper super mega ultra kickoff on Sunday. Brighton 3, Spurs 2. Which are we going to choose, though, for Matt's moment? Floor, Mr. SB, is yours.
Yeah, let's talk about Brentford 5, Wolves 3. An incredible game at the weekend, but I do need to highlight some concerns because it did take an incredible 75 seconds for Brentford to score this time. Honestly, it's unbelievable. This is 4 games running now. Yes, this will go down as a goal in the second minute because if it comes after 60 seconds, they obviously round it up to the next minute. It's incredible. It really does show how much they're working hard at the start of these games. I mean, I wonder if on the training ground, are they practicing on the coin toss? How are they doing this? No, I think it shows great work rate, forward thinking, creativity and drive. And you'd think to yourself, if you're Wolves or West Ham who'd played them the week before, we know what to expect. So let's stop this. But they can't seem to stop them. And it was Nathan Collins who scored after 1 minute. And we'll take this opportunity, of course, to talk about Brentford in general this season, who are having another good season. They're in mid-table. And let's not forget, there was some varied expectations coming into this season for Brentford. And I will put my hands up and say I did have some concerns. When I looked at the teams that were coming up, I thought there's better quality coming up this season than last season. I think there's a chance that maybe an Ipswich, a Leicester or a Southampton survive. Possibly 2. We'll see. We'll come on to the relegation battle later. And who could fall in? Would it be a Forest? Would it be a Brentford? Would it be a Wolves? I was concerned for Brentford. And, they lost Ivan Toney. They've lost Visa at the moment through an injury. But to still score 5 goals, they've actually scored in a goal in every of the last 7 games. So the goal scoring is not an issue for them. And it really does show how well run Brentford are. I mean, we've spoken about the model at Brentford. It's an incredible journey and probably something that any championship club would love to emulate, how Thomas Frank has brought them up and they've more than stayed up. And when they sell players, they replace them well. Mbeumo, he's obviously scoring. Collins, you got Norgard, Pinnock, Carvalho. There is so much quality there and so many reasons to be optimistic. And you wonder to yourself, will they get another early goal in their first game back after the international break, Ben? I've been so impressed.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of things to come back to you with. I wonder, I always remember, maybe it was Roy Keane, one of the Man United players in the 90s that would say, with certain teams, you could tell in the tunnel, they were in their head. And you do wonder, I mean, these are footballers with elite mentalities, but it's got to have been flagged up that they've scored. By the way, can anyone let me know in the comments, have they kicked off all of these games? Because sometimes you get weird early goals where the team doesn't even kick off and they manage to score straight away, don't they? So, I wonder if there's going to be a mental thing, not for Brentford, but for the opposition team, where they're going to be kick it down the ground. Let's just stop this. We don't want to be the team conceding another first-minute goal. And I totally agree with the concerns. It really looked like the end of a cycle for Brentford, didn't it? And Tony was obviously such a, I think you can say, iconic player in their rise. And I think he arrived when they moved to the new stadium, and he felt like the one that was the last piece of the jigsaw. I know there's always a last piece of the jigsaw, and it's never like that. It's always little incremental things, but it felt like a big end of an era for such a, I don't know if you can argue if he's their, someone will tell us in the chat, a Brentford fan, if he's their greatest ever kind of figure, or I know maybe they'll argue other players have been greater, but certainly as a figure in the club's rise. And I thought, yeah, there's a chance they could be down there, but what they're doing, Matt, is they're doing what teams that finish in the middle of the table are doing. If they're in a game against the team down the bottom, Matt, they win it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point you brought up earlier, because I was thinking to myself, well, surely the first thing you do if you're playing Brentford, knowing that they keep scoring in the first minute, is you just make sure they don't score in the first minute. But it maybe is easier said than done. Maybe Brentford are playing mind games with these teams and like causing sort of psychological problems for them, because Wolves maybe then think, right, we need to really sort of drop back at the start of a game. I don't know if they're forcing teams into making mistakes or into getting into some positions. This is not going to carry on forever, but it'd be incredible if they get another early goal in the next game. And touching on what you said about the Brentford model, they've lost so many great players before. Watkins, I think it was Ben Rama they had as well. Not Ben Rama.
Laundry list of them, isn't there? Of set sales, and always got great money for them as well, didn't they?
Yeah, and Tony was such a big figure, like you say, in bringing them up, and in that first season staying up as well. And like I say, losing Visa to injury at the moment. But one thing that's been a constant at Brentford is Thomas Frank and the people that are high up at Brentford, and they just run it so well. Like I say, it's the perfect model. It's like a perfect act of how to recycle, because let's be honest, you get to a point maybe mid-table in the Premier League where you might hit a bit of a ceiling, which might be that for Brentford. But it comes a time where you might have to sell these players on. But if your recruitment and your scouting is as good as theirs is, you're never really going to fall away. And I suppose last season you could say it was a season of regression, but they look like they're right back on track this season. So, fair play to them. I mean, they're 11th at the moment. They picked up 10 points, 13 goals scored already. So I don't see any problems for Brentford. We'll speak once again about the Premier League relegation battle later, including the likes of Wolves. And these teams are scrapping to pull anyone from mid-table in to join them. Like, come on, we need to beat these and suck them into the battle. But Brentford are just sort of keeping them at arm's length distance and, doing very, very well. And maybe they can start looking up the table rather than having to look over their shoulders. So very impressive, and long may the early goals continue.
I always say, Matt, when it's happening 4 games in a row, it's not luck, is it? It might be happenstance and circumstance, but it's not luck for sure. I just round this out just on Thomas Frank, and he was there before he was the manager as well. So it's almost like the succession planning for the succession plan. He's literally already in the building before he's brought in. And last thing I'll say, Thiago Rodriguez, I think I got the right name there, the Brazilian striker who they'd bought in, who's been injured. I think they'll have access to him around Christmas time. So, Matt, if you're a Brentford fan, you're probably like, oh, well, okay, there's another little Christmas present coming in there. Guys, we're going to clip that one out for Matt's channel. So please do get your views in, and do head across, obviously, to the Benjamin Bloom football channel for the full Premier League check-in podcast, to which I should look at my format, Matt, or be able to remember what's happening next. What's happening next, my friend? It's Worldie of the Week. Speaking of the Benjamin Bloom football channel, head over to the community tab, where you will see the poll for Worldie of the Week, where, Matt, we actually disagree with the result here. But of course, the subscribers are never wrong. They're always right. We'll go with this anyway. Here's what the poll says. Go ahead and vote once you've finished watching this wonderful video. Kai Havertz, I've got to say, it wasn't a vintage week. I was struggling to figure out who to put in. I didn't want to put multiple goals from the same game in, which I really, really could have with one of them. So Havertz, left foot in off the post, nice finish. 14% for Arsenal. Pereira, 19% for Fulham, which I think I've given away as my winner. Buonanotte, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly, for Leicester, and more from Leicester in the relegation segment. And the poll says Doku, which, to be fair, it was a great strike, 45%. But Matt, for me, that assist, the looped back heel over the head of the defenders for Pereira's goal, I think it was Jimenez, wasn't it? I've got to go for Pereira, and I think you agree with me, don't you?
I do. I was just saying to Ben off camera that we obviously watch the goals back before we sit down and talk about what will be our worldie of the week. And I thought to myself, I'm going to choose the Pereira goal as mine. And I just loved the build-up to it. But I did think, maybe not necessarily for Ben, but for what the viewers might think, that do people just love someone smashing it from outside the box into the top corner? Because that is what Doku's goal was. Let's give that a quick bit of credit. I mean, the amount of swerve on that strike, Ben, it's moving all over the place. And traditionally, I love those goals. I love like someone who just drills the ball and it moves all over the place into the top corner. But there was something special about that Fulham goal at the weekend. So Iwobi has it out wide. He thinks it into Jimenez. And it really is the assist that makes this the best goal for me. I mean, it's a team goal, but the assist is just delicious. Jimenez controls it and he back heels it, but it's on the volley, isn't it? He sort of back heel volleys it, and then Pereira has to stretch really well to get his toe onto it, and it's such a good goal. And do you think, this is the opposition you're playing, Manchester City, you're going to have to do something special to unlock their defence. So for me, Pereira's goal, and you're choosing the same, right?
Well, I am, and I always think, Matt, I always kind of play this game with myself of, if you pause the action at a certain time in a great goal and think, what are the chances of this ending up in a goal, right? So when the ball goes into Raul Jimenez, the chances of him being able to play that assist to put the ball where he does, the way he does for Pereira are infinitesimally small, aren't they? Whereas with Doku, it's a great strike, but the chances of a class footballer slamming one in the top corner are probably quite a lot higher than, like you say, the half volley back heel mega assist, aren't they? So, I'll go with Pereira. Just to quickly touch on that game, Matt, Fulham could have won that, couldn't they? And we always talk about you're saying about stopping Brentford scoring in the first minute. We know the plan against Man City is always defend really well, catch them on the counter, but go figure, easier said than done. But if Traore had his shooting boots on, they could win that game, couldn't they?
Yeah, he missed one or two big opportunities. I did sense there could be something in this for Fulham. I think I predicted like 2-1, so it was close enough. What I meant by that was I see Fulham scoring. I see it being a close game. Man City have dropped a few points recently, and I know they've rescued a draw against Arsenal, but I still think, given Manchester City's standards, they'll look at any draw as dropped points. And then they drew with Newcastle, and they've lost Rodri, haven't they? So, and on top of that, actually, the busy schedule now, because the Champions League has more games now with the league phase. So I think Manchester City are a team you can get at. Like I say, easier said than done. But given that Fulham came into this sixth in the table, I thought they could cause them some problems, and they really did. And I suppose unfortunate just to come out on the wrong end of this 3-2 defeat. Man City needed that win, though, because if they'd have drawn that 3 draws in a row, they're really losing ground on the top end of the table. So fair play to Fulham for giving them a good game. And I think you could just say for Manchester City, just that bit of quality has just been able to pinch the game, I guess.
They always do it. So go and get voting in the poll. The never wrong poll says Doku is the winner. And the always wrong YouTubers, Matt and Ben, say that Pereira is the winner. But all opinions allowed, as long as they're expressed in a polite and sensible way. Get involved in the comments over on the poll and below the video. And here we go to my least favourite segment this week. Let's have a look at the bottom of the table. Okay, Matt, let's have a look at who is online to be going down from the Premier League into the Championship, or should I say back into the Championship, as it often is lately in the English football pyramid. And I hate to say it, but there's kind of three narrative threads here. One, Wolves are really bad and they're continuing to be really bad, and it's very worrying. Two, Ipswich had probably their worst weekend so far this season. And I'm quoting from the wonderful Craig and Dave on the Blue Monday podcast, even though I do tend to agree. And take about Leicester off the mark. And look, we'll go through team by team. But as much as it kind of pains me because I know the type of football I like, and I'm a Steve Cooper fan, by the way, sometimes the ability to keep a clean sheet in the relegation zone is extremely, extremely vital. And when we're seeing the goals against columns of certain of these teams that we're about to talk about, then, maybe the capacity to work on that skill is something we need to see from certain other teams we're about to mention. Let's start with Wolves, Matt. I know we talked about them quite a lot, I think 2 shows ago. And I know you've spoken about Brentford earlier in the show. But they were hopeless at the back. You're bottom of the table. You're playing against a team that always scores in the first minute, and you're giving away 3 headers and 5 goals. Are we now at the point where it could be realistic that by the time we get back for the next show, Wolves might be looking for a new manager?
Yes, we highlighted these fixtures, didn't we, Ben? They were bottom a few weeks ago, and we said they got Liverpool, Brentford, Man City, Brighton, and Brentford looked the most winnable, and they've come away without even a draw. The game itself, I mean, we've obviously mentioned Brentford's great start. It's easier said than done, stopping Brentford in the first minute, I guess. But it seemed like there was some fight about Wolves, but they just kept chasing Brentford to get back into the game. So they pulled it back twice, I believe. But they were just all over the place at the back, and Brentford found themselves 5-2 up, and then Wolves did pull one back late through Ike Nori, which kind of makes the scoreline look maybe a little bit less embarrassing. But look, we've had great Wolves fans sharing their thoughts, and they're highlighting it's the defence that's the issue, and that kind of scoreline reflects that, doesn't it? They're not having so many problems scoring goals, but considering how many they're conceding, and they've got Man City next, goodness me. I wonder what conversations are going on at Wolves right now. I think maybe O'Neill could be saved by the fact that between these international breaks, you've got the 2 hard games, but maybe here's my logic. I think if you're going to sack a manager during the international break, I think that does make some sense because you've got 2 weeks to try and get an idea of what you're going to do. He's got 2 very difficult games after he comes back, which I think there's a chance they could lose both. But then there's maybe 2 more games before the next international break. If he survived those first 2, he might have the chance to turn it around in the next 2 before the next international break. So difficult to say, but you kind of do feel like they've got to pull something out of somewhere. Maybe do they have to go and get a draw at Brighton? I mean, they're in a position where they need a win, and these fixtures are not getting any nicer. I'm concerned for Wolves.
Yeah, very, very much so. And it's 21 goals in 7 games. Is even my maths works for that. 3 per game you're conceding. It's which you're just going to get relegated with. You can't concede. You need to score 4 goals to win a game on average. So, Matt, I'm going to give Southampton a pass this week. Bearing in mind the ridiculous chasms in English football, you're away at Arsenal. You took the lead. You lost 3-1. It is what it is, isn't it? So I think we've talked long and hard about Southampton. I don't think we learned anything new. And I'm almost going to do the same for Palace because we knew there were big hitters involved in the conversation this week. Palace at home to Liverpool and went under. So those are 3 of our 0-win teams. But let's move on to Ipswich, who are still not in the bottom 3, which is great, but still haven't won a game. But it wasn't good at West Ham. There were mistakes for a couple of goals. The numbers are not good, although, sometimes you look at the XG and a couple of the goals are tap-ins and there are a couple of scrambles, and you're like, okay, that explains it away. But still, that's the point of XG. It tells us it could have been 5-1, 6-1, or what have you. Liam Delap scored. That's good. Calvin Phillips seems to have London Stadium kryptonite, where he just can't play well there by the sounds of it. And as an Ipswich fan, and hopefully you'll be able to give a slightly more balanced view, I'm just desperate to get this first win now. It's just every week it goes now. All of those naysayers are being proved right, that it's so difficult to come up and compete and win games. And we'll talk about Leicester in a minute. The number is reducing now, and you know, you wouldn't imagine Palace will stay on 0 wins. What is your take on a bad game, a bad weekend for Ipswich there?
Yeah, I didn't see it coming. Based on the performances and the results beforehand, I did not see that coming for Ipswich or West Ham. Yeah, it's frustrating because I still think Ipswich have been pretty good this season, and been so close to winning on numerous occasions. To draw 4 games, 1 goal away in all 4 from getting that first win. They've only lost to Man City and Liverpool beforehand. So we got to this point, once you've drawn with Villa and drawn with Brighton, that we were like, it's been okay. The first win needs to come soon. But what I said last week was the narrative will change on what comes next. Will it be the first win or the next defeat? If you'd have beaten West Ham, you'd be, 12th or 13th or something, and we'd be saying, look at this, 5 games unbeaten or something. But, you lose it, and then you lose it in the manner you did as well. It's like, oh, okay, it takes a sharp turn downwards. You've got to, I think, especially given the positivity there has been at Ipswich, you've got to try and keep that going. You've got to look at, we're above the bottom 3. We've got some games coming that are winnable, but you do need to win one. You look at Everton at home and Brentford away. I mean, Brentford away is looking very tricky at the minute now.
And then Leicester at home is the next one as well, Matt. And Ipswich have been decent at home, but Matt, can I just flip the script on that? What if Ipswich go through those 3 games and it's still 0 wins?
It's difficult because it all depends on how many points. Say if somehow Ipswich draw all 3, all 3, we'd be like, okay, that's not too bad. But you can't draw yourself to safety. I mean, it keeps you moving a little bit, but you need that big win to sort of blast you forwards, and it gives you some rest by it. Because I'm not saying that Ipswich are playing for draws, but if they just keep getting draws, it means that when you do lose, it takes a big hit because you've not had that buffer built up by a win beforehand. So it's got to come soon, but you've also got to be so wary of what happens if you lose to Everton. That could be quite disastrous because they could move away from you. And also, like you've just said, Everton and Leicester are home games. You've got to capitalise on those. It's difficult. You need 1 win at least in those next 3, with preferably a draw on top as well, just to keep yourselves moving. Because I know, as I say, we can try and still be positive for Ipswich. I don't think Palace are going to be winless after 10, 12 games. They will finally get moving.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's frustrating because it feels like in the conversation about Ipswich, we have to kick the can down the road. It's like, we'll find out then. But, the proof's in the pudding. If we're still saying we'll find out then after 12, 15 games, that the thing we're going to find out is probably not going to be too pleasant. So let's hope Ipswich can accentuate the positives and jump back on that. I'm probably going to scan past Everton a little bit. 0-0 at home to Newcastle, survived the missed penalty, and there's a bit of a sense with Everton that they're moving towards being, like they're unbeaten in 4 games, and there's points going on the board now. I think, let's call it unbeaten in 3 because one of them was a League Cup game in there against Southampton. Yeah, sorry. So we'll call it unbeaten in 3, but moving in the right direction. And like you've just said, Matt, Everton, big circle around Ipswich away, isn't it? Go and win that game. Second win, put some distance in. But let's talk about Leicester, because you've got to give credit where it's due. They are off the 0. They've got the first win. and I'm going to damn with faint praise here, because on the one hand, you look at the numbers and you say, that doesn't look very viable to me, Matt. You know, the keeper playing a blinder, scoring a worldie, and giving up 19 shots. But on the other hand, that's how you avoid relegation. You beat teams who are kind of better than you. You keep clean sheets. You take your chances. So you can frame that as oh, well, that's not going to happen very often. But go figure, if you're going to be a team that's struggling, that's probably how you're going to win games. So, yeah, I suppose we better give Leicester some praise and sort of tell me your thoughts on the underlying position.
Yeah, when we're looking at this relegation sandwich, as I keep calling it, I think the best way, the way to measure who's involved is probably looking at points per game. Anyone on or below 1 point per game, I'm considering involved. So after West Ham's win, we'll give them a break for a bit. You know, they've pushed away. I mean, even I suppose if Man United lose their next game, they'd be level on a point per game, but surely they won't be involved. I think right now we are quite clear on looking at this 6, and Leicester are top of this mini league, I guess you could say. There's been some decent performances lately, and I think a win was coming. I mean, credit to them for beating Bournemouth, because it's not that easy to beat Bournemouth. You know, Bournemouth have been great. They just smashed Southampton beforehand. And I can understand why some Leicester City fans might be frustrated with Steve Cooper, the style of football maybe. Some of them might think it's a bit strange that he's come to Leicester from Forest, if there is that little bit of a rivalry, I guess. But I really do like him. And I know he's not got the credit in the bank at Leicester that he did have at Forest. But I think if the Leicester fans are patient and willing to just accept this season, it's all about finishing above that bottom 3. Steve Cooper will give you a chance, especially now that you're not going to be getting a points deduction. So, well played. Great goal from Buonanotte. And, I mean, there's still some big games coming. You know, Leicester City going away to Ipswich. If they were to lose that, they could drop back into trouble. I think they could be around the relegation battle all season. But so long as they're keeping their heads above water, then that's great. And like I say, I think if the Leicester City fans can be patient and stick with Steve Cooper, I think they do have a real chance.
Yeah, let's round this out by me just having a little look ahead at some fixtures, Matt, because I think we get quite a few head-to-heads in the next year. It feels like there's a little chunk of the season now, and you already mentioned a couple of them. So next round, Ipswich, Everton, Southampton, Leicester, woof. Following round, Leicester, Nottingham Forest, which is your Steve Cooper. Obviously, we're not quite including Nottingham Forest in the in the kind of relegation sandwich right down the bottom there. But it'll still be an interesting one. Then the following week, Ipswich versus Leicester. Southampton versus Everton. So I think for the next few weeks, Matt, we're going to be using the term 6-pointer, must win, all of that good stuff. Feels like a really key time now, doesn't it?
It does, and I think we're due a few big results down there because we've had so many draws that has not really helped us understand where this is going.
Struggling teams don't win games, Matt.
It is very true, I guess. I mean, I suppose knowing that you only get so many opportunities to win a game when you're a team down there in the Premier League, if you draw a head-to-head, is that a little bit of a loss? I suppose it depends on the context because, as we said, Ipswich got that dramatic late equaliser at Southampton, which made it feel a bit more like a win. You feel like, once again, the pressure's always going to be on the teams that are in the bottom 3 to get out of there. And, the teams that are above it, can they put some distance between themselves and that bottom 3? Once again, I know it can be nerve-wracking and nail-biting for the teams involved, but I will say, once again, as a neutral, I want to see the newly promoted teams having a chance of staying up, and the more teams involved, the better. Right now, I do think we're looking at 6 teams. It might be, as we say each week, that we might be down to just looking at 5 teams later on. Could be 7 teams if one more drops in. But really fascinating, and some big games coming. I can't wait.
Very much so. We will clip this out as ever for my channel here. So if you're watching this clip about the relegation zone, why not check out the whole podcast, the Premier League Check-In podcast. There's a full 30 minutes each week from myself and Matt SB. And with that being said, Matt, do you want to round this out? We've got no mouthwatering matchup or fixtures to talk about. Just give a little plug for your fantastic channel and our collaboration with League One predictions.
Yes, if you're enjoying what you're seeing over here with myself and Benjamin Bloom together, please do head over to the Matt SB channel where we do similar content, myself and Sophie. Of course, we do Championship and Premier League predictions, and myself and Ben do the League One predictions, so it's all good fun. And I follow Coventry City, of course. So, yeah, plenty of football-related content. Be sure to get involved.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. We will see you next week for another Premier League check-in podcast.